So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with James Joyce. He's not I don't know, sometimes he's brilliant and his poems and stories are amazing. I think a few of his stories are the best stories I've ever read. And some of them are terrible and really annoying. And there's kind of like moments of brilliance and moments of terrible kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Like he's just a really irritating kind of person. So most people will tell you that James Joyce is a literary genius. I probably won't go that far, but I will say that there's a lot of merit to what he writes. This poem in particular, I Hear an Army, it's a quite an early poem, not a juvenile poem exactly, but one that he wrote when he was quite young, so slightly underdeveloped perhaps for Joyce's style and skill and craft. Some bits of it are really kind of powerful and sort of impressive, and some bits of it are a little bit cliched maybe, or a little bit kind of, I don't, they're not my best. So yeah, you can decide for yourself whether you like this poem and whether you like Joyce in general. If you do, the short story The Dead is amazing. That's probably my favourite thing that he wrote, so I recommend that short story. So we'll have a look at the poem and you can decide what you feel about it yourself, if you agree with me or not. The first thing to do really with this poem is read it aloud. It's got a very specific rhythm, quite a heavy rhythm. I hear an army charging upon the land, and the thunder of horses plunging foam about their knees. You can see it's got this kind of heaviness to it. So you can just pause the video and read the poem aloud. If you've got it in front of you, maybe underline a few key ideas that sort of stand out to you. The imagery actually is quite good in this poem, so you find some strong images. There's also a little bit of vocab here if you're not sure what some of the words mean. So probably my favourite image, I think, is this. They cleave the gloom of dreams. So they cut through the gloominess of dreams. I think that's really powerful. My least favourite image, maybe this one. Some of them, like I say, cliched. Well, this ending is a little bit like melodramatic, I think. So, what he's saying is the speaker, who may or may not be Joyce himself. Here's an army charging forwards on the land. There's horses foaming around the knees. They're making a noise like thunder as they charge forwards. Charioteers driving the horses are standing arrogant in black armor. So there's chariots and charioteers. You might want to look up an image of that, but a charioteer is someone who drives horses forwards, but they stand behind the horses with reins, kind of on like a platform with wheels. And they have whips that they beat the horses with as well. They cry their battle names into the night. So there's this army kind of moving forwards towards the speaker. And these people are kind of very violent. They're trying to attack him. And he hears their whirling laughter far away. As I moan in my sleep, so you've got the sense that it's a dream. They cut through the gloom of his dreams like a blinding flame. So the reason I really like that image is because when you're dreaming, there are points where you're more or less lucid, where you're kind of like half remembering or not really remembering what happens, and then suddenly you have a really vivid moment. So it's kind of like that. He's got this kind of gloomy dream that he can't quite see clearly, and suddenly he gets this vision of this army. And they clang on the heart as if it was beating on an anvil. So it's like the heart is, heated up and it's being shaped on an anvil like a piece of hot metal. Then they have I don't know why they have long green hair, but they come shaking their long green hair in victory. Again, you get these kind of surreal, surprising, unusual, completely illogical things that happen in dreams. They come out of the sea. So this foam and the horses is kind of turns into the idea of sea foam. And the ending is sort of a question. I think it cut off a little bit there. But we have this, my heart, don't you have any knowledge that makes you feel like this? And my love, why have you left me alone? Why don't why are you too, don't you know not to despair like this? Like, aren't you more intelligent than this? My love, my love, my love, why have you abandoned me? So it turns out that this horrible nightmare is actually just his own heart is kind of broken or misshapen, because he's had a bad experience in love, and that's kind of manifest as this army come to attack him in a nightmare. Yeah, we've got this kind of nightmare of war, classical imagery really, charioteers charging forwards with horses. These are possibly symbols of other men that have come to compete. They might just be manifestations of his own psyche or his own raw emotions, sort of his own mind attacking itself with the anguish over this woman. There's some interesting kind of imagery here, like I said. There's a few techniques such as metaphors, which are quite important. Biblical allusion is really important, so we'll go a bit more onto that soon. But there's a poem that this is heavily influenced by Yeats, W.B. Yeats. So we'll look more at that in a second. Epizeuxis also is normally a rhetorical device more than a poetic device, so it's used in speeches and persuasive writing, but you see it here quite emphatically, clanging, my love, my love, my love. Is sort of claustrophobic and anxiety ridden, the atmosphere that creates. So epizeuxis is basically just when you repeat a word over and over again, or a phrase. The meter is very important. There's a mixture of iambs and anapaests, which I've kind of outlined for you here, propelling the lines forward. So iambs are what we call a rising meter. That's like unstressed and then stressed syllables, like this, unstressed, stressed. So they basically have a heavy emphasis on the end of the foot, and that pushes your line forwards. And anapaest is when you've got three. So unstressed, unstressed, stressed, like that. So again, it's this heavy loaded end to the foot. The foot is a unit of meter in poetry, so it's either 2 or 3 syllables. You can see I've marked where the feet are by that little slash here. So yeah, and the thun is another anapaest. There's an ABAB rhyme scheme which also does the same thing, so it's this kind of heavy charging forwards momentum being created by the poem. There's a volta sort of in the last 2 lines where it's just him turning inwards, thinking it's my own heart that's doing this to myself, it's my own mind. It's not actually anything external, it's an internal psychological anguish that I'm in. So there's a few important attitudes, including the idea that love and war are interconnected. There's a sense of like, the intense passion of love can turn to turmoil and anguish that feels like war if it's unrequited, unreciprocated. There's also this sense of, the nightmares and dreams that we have seem illogical and surreal, but they do actually reflect our reality and our own hopes and fears. So they're, clanging his heart as if upon an anvil. So his heart's kind of pounding and thudding, but it also feels like it's being pummeled. And at the end of the poem, we realize it's actually a love poem and it's about his heart being broken. So the sort of surreal symbolism in the poem gets turned into a real message at the end of the poem. So yeah, context. Joyce was a modernist writer, one of the most famous modernist writers. If you like his work, I mean, this is not really that Joycean. Like, he's a lot more experimental usually than this. This is kind of an early poem. He's only 25 when he writes it, so I'll let him off. So it's published in 1907. He's a maturing writer. The poem's intended to be set to music, so it's deliberately got this musical quality to it as well. He said when he wrote it, he was a lonely boy walking about by himself at night and thinking one day a girl would love him. So he's sort of like, idealizing love in the future. It's a weird kind of portrayal of love. He actually ends up very happily married, so he's all right. So yeah, this poem here, this is an important task to do on I Hear an Army. I want you to just pause read this poem aloud. This is W.B. Yeats's poem. He was an older poet who was also Irish, and he was one of Joyce's, idols, role models. He wrote this poem first, called "He Bids His Beloved Be at Peace." Joyce read this one and kind of almost wrote "I Hear an Army" as a tribute to this one. So they're really similar. You can see that the imagery is similar, the messages are kind of similar, the mood and the kind of feeling is also similar as well. So it's quite common when poets or writers are young that they sort of imitate their idols and then they develop their own style later. And I would say that this is true of Joyce. So at this point in his career, he's kind of imitating Yeats quite a lot. So it's worth reading that poem and doing like a comparison and contrast between this one and I Hear an Army. Yeah, so finally, if you've got time, you can have a look more into the themes and you can try an essay question as well there. So go to scribbly.com. So this is all Scribbly material. Go to scribbly.com if you want more lessons, more videos, downloadable documents, that kind of thing, full courses on various exams that we teach and that type of stuff. And hopefully you've enjoyed this poem. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on Joyce, if you guys like him or not, because I honestly am quite controversial when I say that. I think everyone else I've met who's like a literature nerd loves Joyce, and would find it weird that I'm not that into him. So yeah, if you guys really like Joyce, or if you don't like Joyce, you can let me know your thoughts on him. Read The Dead. That is the best one, I think. And then if you want to really stretch yourself, you can read Ulysses, which is a really giant book, but it's kind of got good and bad passages in. So yeah, thank you for listening. Hopefully you feel really confident on this poem now, and I'll see you guys soon in a future lesson.